city tour. So first of all, let's get acquainted. My name is Myroslava. I will be your guide for today's tour. I'm really grateful that you all came despite this beautiful weather that we have today in Ivano-Frankivsk. And I'd like to ask you, do we have guests of our city today or only locals? You are guests. And where did you came from here? Rohaten. Oh, nice to see you here. So, you're from Rohaten as well, yes? Oh, really? And where did you live? Okay, no problem. So it's just for me because I'm interested. Who is interested in English-speaking guide tours in Ivano-Frankivsk? So, first of all, I'd like to say that I speak informal English, so I'm apologizing for that in advance. And as we start from the market square near our town hall, I'd like to say a few words about our city itself. How did it appear here? Why are we standing here at this spot? Maybe those locals who visit our city every day, who walk through the streets, we can have a small tour and go back to 400 years ago. Can you imagine what was here instead of a market square 400 years ago? I guess maybe more of you know about history of our city, about history of Stanislavia, and you can imagine yourself 400 years ago here. You won't see anything. No market square, no town hall that we are standing nearby. That was a thick forest and a swamp, and this territory belonged to Austro-Hungarian Empire back at that time, and later Polish Empire. This land was owned by Potocki family, and they decided to build a whole new fortress, a whole new city fortress that could stood against the invasions back at that time. You all heard about Halych, about Halych-Volynske Knyazhitstvo. Yes? Have you heard such name? The castle that also stands in Halych was owned by Potocki family as well. And you can put yourself on Potocki's place. You have a big castle, and your castle is under siege. Your people are getting killed by invaders, and you want to secure your family for the whole future years. As you are the head of the family, you want your children to be healthy and wealthy in the future, yes? So you decide to build a whole new fortress that could secure your future. And Potocki chosen this place. Why this particular place? You know that Ivano-Frankivsk, Stanislavia, back at the time, was surrounded by two rivers, two Bystrica, mountain rivers, one called Bystrica Nadvernyanska, and the other Bystrica Solotvinska. Well, we all know how they look like nowadays, but back 350, 400 years ago, Bystricas were really mountain rivers and hard to cross. So the spot was chosen because of the location, because of the thick forest, swamp that surrounded the area, and two rivers that were not really easy to cross and to get to this spot. What they did, first of all, they built a fortress, not the fortress we can imagine, the stone one with high towers, nothing like that, unfortunately. It was a small wooden fortress with ground on the top, and in the middle they decided to build a small wooden town hall. We don't have exact numbers of citizens who lived back in Stanislavia when it was founded, but we know for sure that the date is 1662. This is our birthday, the birthday day of our city. and we are celebrating this day 7th of May each year. So those of you who visit our city for the first time, I'm inviting you for our birthday party because locals know and the guests, I think, will be interested in our festivals that are held during this festive. So, you know that Potocki wanted to secure their family, built the whole new city, brand new city, built a town hall in the middle of it, and you know, they were right. Because in 1676, really Turks came to the fortress, and they were shocked because they didn't know that such city existed back at that time. They stopped near the city, and our city wasn't taken in 1676. It was our right, it was the first win of the fortress, and Polish king back at the time, when he heard that there is such a small new city called Stanislavo that stood the Turks, he decided to release us from paying taxes for 10 years. And then you can imagine, when citizens don't have to pay any taxes except the crown ones, the market appears and people want to live here because it's cheaper than to live in other cities of the region. And I'm telling you that Stanislavo, maybe you can tell me, I guess you all know, why our city was called Stanislavi.
Because the son of Potocki, it's the son of
Yes.
Potocki name.
Yes, the founder of the city, the founder of the city name is Andrzej Potocki, Andrew Potocki in English, Andriy in Ukrainian, and there are two different versions why our city was named Stanislavi. After his elder son Stanislav, and you are correct, and there's another version that Andrew's father also named was Stanislav Rivera Potocki. I guess we won't know for sure after whom he named the city. Maybe when the father visited the city, he told him, well, you see, I built the city for you, and when the son was behaving not so well, he told him, you see, Stanislav, I built this city especially for you, so be a good man and raise up. Well, who knows, but the city's name was Stanislavo, and when in 1672 this market square appeared, there were two main nationalities that inhabited our city. It was Ukrainians and Polish. A few years later, Andrzej Potocki invited Armenians to live in our city. Most of them moved from Tesmanica. It is a small city nowadays, 10 kilometers from contemporary Ivano-Frankivsk. Armenians were very good with making different crafts out of leather, sorry. And he wanted to make his market the biggest and the cheapest in the whole region. So Armenians were the first ones who inhabited our city after Polish and Ukrainians. And afterwards, when Jews heard that there are no taxes to pay in our city, of course they wanted to move here and to build their first shops inside the market square. So the square we see right now in front of us is a bit different than in 1662. Yet still we have many buildings preserved, but they are preserved the end of 19th, beginning of the 20th century. And the town hall, well, I guess you all had an opportunity to watch over the town hall. The one we are standing near now was built in the 20th century. It's one of the youngest town halls in the whole Ukraine, and it is very unique. You know, our town hall is the only town hall in the whole Ukraine that was never used as a place to help the government. So no town hall itself was inside this building. The first one we mentioned, 1662, a wooden one. The second was partly wooden, partly stone rock. The third one was made out of solid rock, but it burned to the ground, unfortunately, renewed, and the World War I took it away from us for all. And when the restorations began, there were different versions how to rebuild our town hall, to build it like the old one or to create something new. Well, you know, in all history epochs, we know that architecture has to develop, and our town hall was built in constructivism style, the architecture Stanislav Trela, and it really is magnificent building, the only golden roof in the whole Ukraine that has a town hall, ratusha as we called it. And if there is someone that hasn't been on our observation deck, I really recommend to do it, because you know, back a few years ago we didn't have an opportunity to visit an observation deck on the top of the town hall, and our tourists had to visit the legend building left of you. They had to visit a restaurant just to have a quick view on our market square. So now we have a beautiful opportunity to see the whole central part of Ivano-Frankivsk from the top, and in the end of our city tour you'll be able to visit it if you hadn't been there already. So tell me, are you cold? How are you feeling?
Okay,
Can we move on?
yes, we can move on.
We can move
Everything
on.
okay, yes.
Okay, so let's go, and my umbrella will be beside for you all. There's a spot that you can hide from the rain. So because of the rain, I thought that printed materials won't be a good idea. So I have some pictures for you of our old town hall. I'd like to show you. Where in different literature you can find different epostasis of our town hall. This was the third or the fifth, the one made out of solid rock that I told you about. And here you can see the difference between the previous town hall and the one we have right now. And maybe you will ask me why we are standing right here in the middle of the rain. Well, first of all, there is no monument to Ivan Franko in the middle of the town, in the old town near the market square. So I'd like to show you the monument of Ivan Franko and his second love, Józefa Dzwonkowska. Because of the rain, it's not so very easy to look at it. It's located high at the fifth floor. On the right you can see Ivan Franko, and on the left is Józefa Dzwonkowska. That you see that they are trying to that they are trying to help hands, but unfortunately that is impossible. The barrelief was constructed especially like this because some of them say that Market Square was the spot where Józefa and Ivan Franko were meeting. You know, Ivan Franko was a guy that really loved women. He had many women friends. He liked chatting with them. He visited Stanislav city very often. He had many friends in here. As you all know, he wasn't born in Ivano-Frankivsk. But here he held headings of his radical party. His first love, Myroslava Nod, also was born near contemporary Ivano-Frankivsk. Unfortunately, they weren't matched according to Olga's father, and she had to marry a priest. His second love Józefa Dzwonkowska never married. She died out of tuberculosis, but she wrote letters to Ivan Franko till the end of her days. And Ivan Franko is very magnificent man, and our city was named after him in 1962. It was a present given by the USSR government to us. Why I tell a present? Can you imagine when we became part of USSR? Politicians noticed that we have a city in the western Ukraine that is named after one of the biggest kultul, we all know this word, a landlord, that was against the local citizens, against the we people. Well, they decided that it's not correct name for the city and wanted to change it. One of the variants was Prekarpato-Ukrainsk, or the other variant was Stalino-Karpats, something like that. There were many of them. Unfortunately, I don't recall the names. Between all of them, the name Ivano-Frankivsk was one of the most prominent to us, and that was the name that was given in 1962 to our city. We are really glad about it, because if not be in Ivano-Frankivsk, it could be Stalino-Karpatsk or something like that. By the way, there are many different settlements named after Ivan Franko, but only Ivano-Frankivsk has a name and a surname of this famous man. So we are unique as well. Also, as we are standing here at the market square, down the street, Haliska Street, was located one of the main gates to our city, the Haliska Gate. We had two of them, Haliska Gate and Tesmanetska Gate, and a small one called Armenian Gate, but it was a pedestrian. If you wanted to drive into the city, you could only use two of this. Unfortunately, we don't have Tesmanetska or Haliska Gate anymore, but we have an installation in the basement of Galleria and Trade Center. By the way, many citizens of Ivano-Frankivsk never even knew that such installation existed in the basement. So, if you hadn't been there yet, you can visit and see the installation, how the architecture of the building thought that gate looked like. Why it was installed down there? Because underneath our town hall, we have a few labyrinths that connect the town hall with Virgin Mary Cathedral, and three others which we don't know for sure where they are ending. One of which is connecting the town hall with maybe Bystrica outside the city back at the time, and the labyrinths go underneath the building that stands in front of you. So it's a reminder that we had such labyrinths and that citizens won't forget about them. So let's go. So we are here near the Virgin Mary's Cathedral, Roman Catholic Cathedral. By the way, this is the oldest building in our city, a contemporary art museum. If someone hadn't been inside the art museum, I'd like to show you how it looks like. And here's another variant. Except the exhibition, you also can watch concerts that are held sometimes in the art museum. The most famous for me and the most beautiful is Night at the Museum, when our museum workers inviting our musicians from the Philharmonic, and when you listen to this music at night, it's really magnificent, very mysterious, and it's like you are back in 1690s, 1710s, at the time when the building was constructed. By the way, this was, as I told, the first Roman Catholic church at the city, constructed by the Andrei Pototsky, the first stone, and afterwards, as you can see, it was reinforced by counter forces because of the soil. The soil isn't stable at this part of our city. Well, as we told earlier, there were swamps. And in the basement there is still a crypt where Pototsky family were buried. It's closed right now, you won't be able to visit it, but when we have Polish tourists visiting Ivano-Frankivsk, the first question is where the Pototsky tomb is located. So this is the spot. If you have guests from Polish in our city, you can recommend them to visit art museum. By the way, it was well preserved because during the USSR period it was given to our oil and gas university, and when we became an independent Ukraine, if I recall correctly, maybe you can correct me, it became an art museum of Prikopesya. Plus, in the basement in the crypts is buried Stanislav Pototsky, the one that someone told me the city was named after, the son of Andrei Pototsky. A few years before he died, he brought to our city, to Stanislav, St. Vincent's, I forgot the English variant of the word, mości. Maybe Natalie can correct me. I'm sorry, it's been such a long time since I've had an English-speaking group. Yes, it's really true because of the old quarantine. And we had pilgrims in our city as well. They visited us very often. And first of all, they wanted to see St. Vincent's mości, I'll Google it sooner, and pray for them. Afterwards, when in 1683 was a huge battle near the Vienna, our Stanislav Pototsky was a participant and he died during that battle. He was buried in the crypts, and this is the man that our Austrian guests are asking about, because his heart is buried in Austria, in Vienna, and his body lays underneath this beautiful building. Just a quick stop near the Metropolitan Andrei Sheptetsky. You know, he had become a bishop of Greek Catholic Church here in Stanislavo, and in 1901 he became a metropolitan of Greek Catholic Church. By the way, you can see it at the monument. He was a tall man. At the beginning of the 20th century, he was considered to be a very tall man. He had 2 meters and 3 centimeters of height. Often he wore no shoes. He was walking barefoot because he wanted to be at the same height as his old brothers. And when he was dining with his brothers, he took a small chair so that his head was at the same level as the head of all his brothers that he was dining with. Really, these are the facts that our priests were telling me about him. He was very kind man, loved children very much. All his money he dedicated for his work, for Greek Catholic churches all over the Western Ukraine, for opening educational establishments for children, for creating new books for children. So this whole square that we are standing at is named after him, Andrei Sheptetsky Square. We also are calling it our religious square. Maybe you also notice when we walk through the central part of the city, we try to walk through Andrei Sheptetsky Square, not the market square, because it's quieter and the atmosphere here is very unique. Maybe That's why during the USSR period here was opened a bus station, but thanks to it the square preserved, and now we have maybe something very magnificent. By the way, here also was located a secret exit out of our city. You see the art that was presented to our city in 2012, when we had 350 years. It was our birthday present from the blacksmith. Well, I don't know if I have to tell you about the blacksmith festival. You all visited it, yes? No? Not all of you. So every year we are holding blacksmith festival, except 2020 because of the quarantine. And the blacksmiths from all over the world, they are visiting Ivano-Frankivsk and creating a unique sculpture together. Of course, they know in advance what sculpture that would be in the end. And during the festival, they create sculpture, hide from all of us for the whole year. And the next festival starts from opening and installing this previous sculpture somewhere in the middle of the city. This arc symbolizes that our city is unique, that we had 4 main nationalities living in it. You see the name Stanislava in the basis of the arc, and on the top is Archangel Michael that protects our city. We have the same protector as the cave city as well. In the end of this road, the Nizova Street, was a small gate from which the citizens were able to escape from the city, but only from the inside of the city. Outside you weren't able to see it, so if someone wanted to sneak inside through this door, that wasn't possible. And by the way, there's located one of the oldest baths in Ukraine, called Neptune. Why is it interesting except that it is the oldest? Ivan Franko held the holding of his radical party inside that building. Really, that's a fact, because when he wanted to gather all his friends for a meeting, for the next meeting of the party, and to communicate about their next moves, next steps, no hall wanted to hold such an event inside. And the bus was a public place. It couldn't say no to them, so they used it as a small place to hold the next holding of a radical party. A small walk that you can hide from the rain now. One second, because I'd like also to show you how the Church of the Resurrection looked like. As you can see, our Greek Catholic Church, Resurrection of Christ. The one behind you, the church behind you. I didn't stop there because of the mass. When you have time and who haven't been inside, I'd like to show you the inner side of the Greek Catholic Church. As you can see, we have a 5-row iconostasis. One of the authors was Modest Kosenko, famous icon maker. So the other picture of the Greek Catholic Church. The last one. As you can see, it didn't change much, really. looks almost the same, but if you look closer to the building itself, you will find a table which has a date 1729. It's the truth. It was the day when the church was in process of building. But few years later, there was an inspection of the building itself, and the architects decided that if they put a roof on the walls, few years later, the cupolas would just fall on the heads of the believers. So there was a very long discussion what to do with the church itself. They decided to destroy it and to rebuild it again. So the church you see in front of you was built in the middle 1745, 1750s. I will tell you later why we don't have the exact date of the building of the same church. But what I can tell you for sure, that this church held inside all the Christian religions during the existence time of it. It was built especially for Jesuits, for order of Jesuits, which was invited into our city to build the first school. You know, before 1720s, 1730s, we didn't have a school that could provide rich, how to say, nobles with the proper education. So the Jesuit order arrived. They told to Potocki family, okay, we will build a school in your city, but we have to have our own church. So the church was built partly for government funds, partly for funds of Potocki family, and the school behind it, you can see it near the Rotonda where Holy Mother is, and behind it is located the building. There was opened the first school in Stanislaus city, and many famous Polish noblemen were visiting it. Afterwards, when Jesuit order left Stanislavo, this church was used for different purposes, mostly for educating students. Afterwards, it became the church of all confessions. So in the morning, there could be a Roman Catholic Mass. In the evening, there could be a Ukrainian Orthodox Mass. And at night, it could be Great Catholic Church. So all the priests, they had to communicate with each other and to pick the dates for the masses they'd like to held inside the church. When became the end of 19th, the beginning of the 20th century, this church was restored by the Andrei-Sheptytsky's money funds. He was really a rich man. Partly Andrei-Sheptytsky, partly also citizens of Ivano-Frankivsk at that time. And the church became Greek Catholic. Inside was put this iconostasis, you just seen, 5-row iconostasis. It's preserved, it's restored, and it is still inside the church, which is also a blessing for us. By the way, I don't know if you noticed, when you visit this church, except that the windows look really small, yes, it's very light inside. The construction is very unique because all these small painted glasses, the stained glass, it looks directly to the point of the sun, and it was constructed especially for making this building inside very light. When you visit it in the sunny day, it looks like the sun is shining upon you from the rooftop of the church. Plus, you can see that Modest Sosanko, who also worked with frescoes inside the church, he was trying to unite Western and Eastern Ukraine. You know that we have all our embroidery. Hutus have their own ornaments. mostly use geometrical figures, and in the central part of Ukraine mostly use floral design. So inside, when you see the arc near the columns inside the church, you will see inside is the floral design, and outside the columns are decorated with our Hutzul design as in an embroidery. Not many people notice it, so next time when you visit our Greek Catholic Church, pay attention also what's upon your heads. There is also a saying that when the church was constructing, there was found golden, how to say it correctly, treasure, something like that. I was trying to find some 100% information about it, but unfortunately I didn't. Many books really write about it, that when the church was rebuilding for the second time, in 1740s, there were found few gold coins, but it wasn't enough even for building one column of the church itself. But our locals like legends, and really it's nice to hear that when the church was building there was found a treasure, and for the money that were found underneath, the whole church was raised. I see you are cold. Maybe someone like to have a cup of coffee. Well, I'm asking because I see that the girls are freezing. We can walk through Adam Mickiewicz Square, and somewhere in there maybe you will be able to find some coffee spots. Yes or no? No. Okay. Then let's go right here. Because it's wet and I don't want to stop the directorate of the railways. So first of all, look at the building that is behind you, the directorate of the railway station, 1894. Now this is Medical Academy, Medical Institute, the main facility for it. But you know that the railway in Myroslava was built a few years earlier than the railway in Kharkiv and Kyiv. Yes, you knew about it. Right. And when there was a question where to build a directory of the railway in Stanislavo or maybe Chernivtsi, Stanislavo was chosen. But the spot wasn't the best, because from over here, if you want to get to the railway, you have to take, well, at least 7 minutes of walk. And it wasn't very convenient. Back when the building was constructed in 1894, the railway authorities get to know it, that it wasn't very convenient, and started to think where to build another facility. They built one, we all have seen it. It's near the railway station. If you look to the front of the railway station from the park, the building on the left was built. And this one was given to our local authorities, to our government, to Magistrat. As we spoke earlier, during the World War I, our Ratusha was completely destroyed, and where our authorities had to have their facility. They moved few steps forward to the market square and decided to choose this facility as the next Magistrat. And after 1945-46, if I recall correctly, our medical institute was established in Stanislava, and this facility was given to them. And the authorities afterwards moved to the White House, as we all call it, in the end of 60s, if I recall correctly. By the way, this building is the only quarter building in the whole city. You can walk through it, through whole 4 walls of the building, and it was one also of the first 4-story buildings in the city. which also is very unique and is well preserved since the World War I and World War II. Because during the wars, unfortunately, not so many buildings were lacking. For example, the building you see left of you, Passage of Gartenberg, 1904. It was built by Gartenberg brothers as the first covered trading centers in the whole city. The concept was exceptional. Well, we can say it for rich clients. The gold marble inside, high columns, 13 meters high. But unfortunately, it stood only till World War II. The restorations weren't very, well, how to say, very original, and only in 2011 the last restoration was held of the Passage of Gartenberg, and we have something more likely like the Passage of 1904. By the way, this was the first building in Stanislavi that has a glass roof. You can imagine that on the second floor there was something like a balcony. There was located a restaurant back in 1904 or 5, and when you visited the restaurant, there was only a small candle on your table, and you just observed the stars. Well, it was the restaurant where many, many hearts were connected, where proposals were held, and one of the most expensive restaurants back at that time. By the way, the one way to our bastion is also located here, but it's rainy, and I guess in the end of the tour we will be able to hide from the rain inside the bastion, or if the rain will fall heavily. In the end of the tour we will come back to the bastion, and I'll be able to show you how our city really looks like. Let's go. We're up here. So we all reached the end of our city. Now we are located at the old Tesmenitsa Road, which led and leads to Tesmenitsa city. If you like long walks, straight forward 10 kilometers and you will be in the mid-town of Tesmenitsa. Now this is Vice Square, Vicevei Maidan. Vice is Helding, and this is one of the main squares in our city. To tell that this is the main square, well, I cannot do that because we have 4 main squares: Vicevei Square, Market Square, and Andrei Sheptytsky Maidan. But this is the square where all the Heldings stand till this day. We have our Christmas tree also in the middle of Vice Square, plus we have our Christmas market all over the Vice Square. And since we got our fountain behind you, this is the meeting point of most of Ivano-Frankivsk citizens. So if you want to have a meeting with someone, just tell, I will meet you by the fountain. And this is the spot, you won't miss it. Plus, here I'd like to show you the buildings that are like the gates to our Stometriivka. The building on the left and on the right of you. The first one, the green building, this was the Hovanets Kamyanetsa, we called it, the solid rock construction. It was the 5-storied building in the whole city. The first building with unique features. The owner was a publisher, Hovanets. He had his own publisher center in the basement of the building. On the ground floor was located one of the best restaurants called Union, to unite the citizens of Stanislavi back at the time. The building had the first elevator in the city, lift elevator, and the first, maybe one of the first, the most magnificent and the most expensive hotel was opened inside this building. Sometimes even Hovhannes had a joke that even if the war starts, my building will still stand, because he had his own electricity, his own all the amenities that were needed for the building to survive the war. He was right, really, because during World War II, this building was so beautiful. Well, Nazi Germans thought so, that the Reichstag of Stanislava was located inside the building. Unfortunately, when Germans left our city, all the marble, gold and hobelens that were inside, they took with themselves, and afterwards there was still a small hotel which was closed, and they opened a business center cave. So inside you won't be able to find the hotel rooms, only a business center, but outside the building still looks the same because the architecture is also unique. The architecture was Frederick Janusz, and you can compare the building of, well, it's maybe 1912, 1913 picture, and the contemporary one. I told you about the two buildings. Building that is on the left of you also was designed by Janusz, and the only difference is the cupola that was on the rooftop of the building. It was lost during the World War II and never restored. Thank you. Yet still Janusz was very, well, how to say, futuristic, how to say. About the Great Fire in Chicago in 1920s. After the Great Fire, the almost 80% of Chicago burned to the ground and was reconstructed in the style of Reconstructivism. These two buildings, our architects also say that they are built in Reconstructivism style, but at least 10 years before, the Chicago architects told that they invented the style. So really, my tourists from the USA who visits Ivano-Frankivsk, they don't believe me, and we are all going to the table that is in the front of the building, that they could see for themselves that the building was constructed in 1912, and 2 years later the building, well, where the jewelry shop is located, was constructed. Because really, if you visit Chicago, maybe you were there, many buildings look very, very familiar to this one. Well, these were the first skyscrapers of Stanislava city back at the time. By the way, the sculptures that you see on the fronton also were constructed by Stanislav's sculptor, Antoniak. He was famous because he constructed sculptures for the graveyards, yet still he was a very exquisite person. He came to the building on a Harley-Davidson motorcycle. He was wearing all the time the leather jacket, leather pants, and the big cross that was on his chest. Many people weren't able to work with him, only by observing how he looked like. His style was very unique, yet still you see how beautiful his fantasy was, and his sculptures stand there more than 100 years, and nothing happens to him. So now every extraordinary person has something more inside of him. Let's go. Top is a bank quarter. From this spot, rain. No rain anymore. No. By the way, these four buildings that you see in front of you, they form a quarter, which is considered the most preserved historical quarter of the whole city. This building was the first one. I don't recall correctly, it was 1887, something like that. I don't want to miss much. I'd like to find a picture of the quarter itself. Unfortunately, I have only the picture from Shoshkevich Street. How it looks like, the part of the quarter. From Shoshkevich Street, you'll be there in a few seconds. You see the cupola. Over here, the cupola. It's the view from Shoshkevich Street. And the next one I found was the picture of Milk Cafe that most of us remember. This mushroom umbrellas that almost every citizen was went to meet it. Why am I showing you these pictures over here, not there on Shoshkevich Street? The history is this. The first backwater building, Herman Bass building, was built approximately 1887. He opened there a cafe called Union. You heard that name already, yes? I told you about it. But before World War II, he decided to leave the city, and the rights to use the name Union he sold to Hovanets, who opened a restaurant and hotel called Union. And over here, Herman Bass opened Union Cafe, but it wasn't very profitable. So what he decided to do? It's the first story. He decided to open a pub. Called it the same, the Union, but it wasn't profitable so far. Afterwards, he decided that there's some marketing needed to bring more people inside the pub. So he created a competition. You can imagine the end of 19th, beginning of the 20th century. We had the theater already, no cinema so far, and people had to have some attraction, to have some recreation for themselves. So after the Holy Mass, at 3 o'clock, he held a competition during which the waiters from the pub had to take 4 glasses of beer and to run 100-meter distance. So there was some kind of, how to say, the one who won the competition had a free weekend or some other prize. Herman Bass was deciding what to do, and there was some animation for the citizens, and afterwards they were entering the Union pub to celebrate the win of the waiter that they were fighting for. And when Herman Bass left, he decided that his wife owned the building, and she sold it to the Austro-Hungarian Bank. And since 1913, 1914, in this building is located one of the banks. That was Austro-Hungarian, afterwards Polish bank. Now we have Raiffeisen also like Austrian bank, but the owner is Ukrainian, so everything is okay. All the taxes are paid. Later, the building behind the Herman Bass residence was constructed especially for Austro-Hungarian bank, because this building wasn't enough for them. They wanted to have more space, and these two buildings, they are connected between themselves. So if you maybe you know someone who works in Bank, and they can confirm that there are doors that you can enter from one building to another. About the buildings, the other two buildings, let's go a few steps so I'll be able to tell you about them. So about the two other buildings that forms the bank quarter, there is a Graver's residence. Nobody knows for sure who Graver was. He wasn't a nobleman, he wasn't an aristocrat, he had no coat of arms, nothing like that, but he had lots of money. Back at that time, at the end of 19th century, it was very popular to build such called revenue houses, houses which gave the owner a profit. This was one of them. So how it worked, Graver built a beautiful, nice building and was giving, well, how to say, giving it to the people who had no place to live in. And of this profit he was able to held some balls, to build another buildings, and as I told you, nobody knew where all his money came from. But why he decided to build this building at this spot? If you look behind you and you see the green building, Незалежності 12, this building was constructed in 1886 as our first casino. Nothing like Las Vegas, maybe you imagine something like that, unfortunately not. It was casino for the noblemen, and on the second floor was located a beautiful bar, and this was the spot that you could know everything from the bartender. So if you entered Stanislavov city for the first time and you wanted to know where to sell, where to buy, who knows who, or you were looking for a specific person, this was the spot where every traveler enters for the first visit in Stanislavov. He had to take steps to the second floor and to ask a bartender. Why that? The casino was private and they were holding balls a few times a month or maybe once a month. During those balls only noblemen were invited inside and +1. So what happened back at that time? There were no Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, nothing like that, and people had to communicate somehow. So the bells were only variant to get acquainted with a nobleman and maybe a chance to have a proper husband. So all the Stanislavian girls, they were wearing the best clothes, they had the best shoes, the best jewelry, and they were just walking line A, lane B. This was the first name of our pedestrian street, line AB, because they were walking from point A to point B. By the way, line A, B, C, D, A, E, D, they were very common names for pedestrian walks in the all European cities. Why line? Because the buildings that were constructed one near another, it was called the line of the building. So the name was very common. From point A to point B, they were walking around. And when the balls were held, of course all of them were walking around here, and maybe some nobleman will notice her and take her to the ball. Plus, the windows were opening, music was all over the spot, and this was maybe the first meeting point, the first party in the Stanislavov that was held for everyone. But Graver was so ashamed because he was not a nobleman and he wanted to be a member of the casino club. Casino Club told him, no, you are not a nobleman, so we won't be inviting you to our parties. So he built this building. Sometimes when the parties were held in casino, well, it was only the best day for him to hold party as well at the same time. So you can imagine what was happening. Music was over there and over here, but Grover had no appointments, nothing like that, no invitations. If you looked, well, how to say, if you had gone through the face control, you could enter the building and have a free drink and enjoy the party. I don't know how many times he held something like that, but well, we can say for now that maybe it was the first all-inclusive in Stanislaviev. And yet, after a few parties like that, he was invited to become a member of the casino club. Of course, he accepted it because it was his intention for the first time. And yet, many girls still afterwards were wandering the streets because they knew that noblemen will be somewhere around the corner. Later, most of us remember that on behind you, where the wall is, where is McDonald's and the children are painted, was located a milk cafe, молочное cafe we were calling it, and it was one of the most popular places to visit during the USSR period. The best milkshakes and coffees were served over there. Because the cafe was so popular, the government decided that we need place under open air to have a cup of coffee, and that is the picture I showed you. Because of the milk cafe, a part of contemporary Shashkevich Street was closed and became the first pedestrian variant of the street. Well, now you can see this is the cupola you see in front of you, and the photo was taken from that point. And the length of Shashkevich Street is approximately 100 meters. So this is one of the variants why our pedestrian part of Nezalezhnosti Street is still called Stometrivka, 100-meter street. The one variant because of Shashkevich Street that was closed due to milk cafe, or maybe because of 100 meters athlete runnings that were held at the beginning of the 20th century, or maybe because the part of contemporary Nezalezhnosti, at that time Radyanska Street, was also closed for the pedestrian. Maybe that part of the street gave the whole name. We cannot tell you for sure, but what we know that our contemporary pedestrian part of Nezalezhnosti Street is 480 meters, or if we consider the Vicha Square as well to the fountain, it's 520 meters long. So it's not the longest, of course, pedestrian street in the world, but hardly 100-meter street. Yet when there was a reconstruction of the pedestrian part of Radyanska Street at that time, our architectures even won a Shevchenko Prize for the plan of it. And later there was decided that it would be beautiful to plant some trees that are the same breed, and in the late 80s there was decided to plant Canadian maples all along the pedestrian street of Radyanska, and afterwards the maples also were planted approximately, or maybe even further, the railway bridge. I don't know, maybe you can tell me, I haven't been there for a long time. Tesmanetsa Street is also planted with maples. Yes? Oh, so even so far. So only in the late 80s we got the contemporary view of our pedestrian street. And now the best shops the jewelry shop, the best restaurants, cafes, they are all located at this point. Well, because even 300 years ago that was the most crowded street of all, though it became to exist as a street well, in the middle 19th century, the 20s, 40s of 19th century years. So we won't be going for the pedestrian street, you all know it very well. Here we'll turn the corner and go to get acquainted with Adam Mickiewicz and with our Ukrainian plast.
Maybe we even don't need a microphone anymore. Is it okay if I don't use it? Okay. So we stopped here because first of all I wanted you to get acquainted with our plastun. Maybe we have a member of plast among us. Yes, we do, yeah. You were active, you are now active member? Not yet, no anymore. So, but before we speak about plastuns, I'd like to tell you a story about Sokil organization, the Falcon in English. That was very active during the Polish period of our history. Because the building you see in front of you belongs to Sokil Society. By the way, the street looked like this back at the beginning of the 20th century. Very nice and pretty familiar, yes? Mm-hmm. So the Sokil, the building itself has a very interesting history. Maybe some guys already told you. That was a bit later. The same square, Mickiewicz Square. You can see Adam Mickiewicz in the middle, over here. That is his monument. And the Sokil Society building and its tower is also here. It was built especially for Sokil, sports and patriotic Polish organization. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. But you know, when it was built, I heard different stories that Sokol, they especially bought an insurance and afterwards burned to the ground the building, so the money that insurance paid afterwards were used to build a cinema that we all know very, very well, our Lumiere cinema. It's a partly true, partly. You know, when the building was constructed, we still didn't use electricity to lighten it. All over the Stanislavov city were the special pipes on which the gas was transporting, the gas that was used for the lamps that were lighting the buildings back at the time. Well, the same as usual as in all Europe. And during the construction something went wrong and the pipes had a leak. And one night, thanks to God, only one member of Sokil Society was inside the building at that time. He heard that something smells very bad. Went to the basement and there wasn't a time to lighten up the I forgot the word. maybe you can help me. Fonar in English. Fonar, torch. Oh, torch. Thank you very much. So he used a small torch, and when he lighted it, the building in the basement had blown. Thanks to God, the building was completely new and concrete basement. Nothing fell apart. Only the guy was very frightened because his brows completely burned to the ground. But yet the building stood, and only after this incident Sokol Society decided to buy an insurance for the whole building. Yes, it was burning in the late 20s, if I recall correctly, it was 29 or 28. It burned a little bit, and the money that were paid by an insurance company, they were enough to restore the building and to buy a land on which contemporary Lumiere cinema is standing. But the whole cinema was built only for the society's money, not for the insurance companies. Yet still, as Sokol Society was pro-Polish, they wanted to make their newborn Polish children very patriotic. There was installed the monument you see in front of you to our Plast. I won't tell you much about Plast because you all know about them, but we are very grateful for all their work, because they were not only patriotic, Ukrainian patriotic, they were forbidden for many, many years. They were helping our children use how to survive in the rural area, in the mountains, how to navigate through the forests. So not only sports organization, but maybe a survival one, something like that. Plus, many members of these organizations became part of our army, our UPA army, and not only young boys, but we are very thankful also for girls who were members of this organization. Because of them, we have many literature works, really poetry, different novels that we still can read, written by our Ukrainian authors, because during the times they were hiding everything that was written in Ukrainian somewhere in their storages, and when we became independent, all of these works were shown to the community. No, I'm telling something wrong, girls. No. So it's a bit cold. About the Plast, you all know. The bird that is holding a plastun is our Ukrainian eagle, Berkut. They are very rare birds, and they were really often used during the period of World War II, helping the guys to navigate through the forests. They're very, very clever birds. You heard about the stories, yes? How Berkut saved many lives of our soldiers. So let's go get acquainted with Adam Mickiewicz. So this is Adam Mickiewicz, the man that all our pagans really love. Originally, as you saw on the first picture, he was standing in the middle of Adam Mickiewicz Square. By the way, all this park structure, maybe, well, yes, really, probably is the only structure in the city that never changed its name. When it was 1898, the day of 100 years from the day of birth of Adam Mickiewicz, Polish poet, this park was created and named after him. You can maybe ask me, this was the period when our Stanisław was part of Austro-Hungarian Empire. Yet Adam Mickiewicz was Polish poet, so why he appeared in Austrian city? You know that Polish, they are very national and they really love their country. And Polish people who lived in Stanisław, they were feeling themselves under pressure from Austrians. So Austrians decided to make a present for them so that society, Polish society, would be a little bit quieter. And Adam Mickiewicz appeared here. Well, someone says that it was specially made for Polish. Some others literature I found to tell that Adam Mickiewicz was here only because in Krakow there also was a celebration dedicated to Adam Mickiewicz. By the way, this is how he looks like. And the artworks very similar, really. And in Italy, Krakow city made a reservation for the Adam Mickiewicz monument in Italy. There had to be made a beautiful monument out of Carrara marble, but something went wrong, and in Italy were made two different monuments. One of them was given to Stanisław as a present, as a gift for our city. When the monument was installed, it was made out of white marble, very beautiful, but it didn't survive. And, well, it was damaged. It survived the war, but it was damaged. And afterwards, after World War I, it was decided to make him bronze variant of Adam Mickiewicz. It was made, it stood in the middle of Mickiewicz Park, but during World War II, Germans wanted to cut Adam Mickiewicz and make an artillery, bullets out of it. There are two versions. One of them says that some Polish guys cut it before the Germans and hide it somewhere in the basement of the buildings. And the other version says that Germans really cut the monument, but the man who was taking the bronze was a Polish one, so he didn't make bullets out of the monument, and after the war the monument was given back to the city. We don't know what the version is the true one, but the monument is the oldest monument of Stanisław, Ivano-Frankivsk contemporary, but after the World War II it was installed at this point, not in the Central Valley. And here he is watching all over the spot, because up till this day many chess players are playing here at this park, many children are walking around, and I guess Mickiewicz would be pleased that he's standing at such a beautiful place. By the way, except Adam Mickiewicz, behind him you see a building that now belongs to our Philharmonic. I'd like to show you how the building originally looked. This was the first theater of the city. It looked a little bit different, yes? This was the original version.
Original version is best.
Yes. So we maybe even all the architectures of the city consider so. Our Stanisław theater was really, well, how to say, prominent and very well visited, because sometimes even from Lviv people were coming to Stanislavів to listen to Соломія Крушельницька, and that's why at the USSR period this theater was small enough to contain all the people who wanted to listen to the singers and to watch the plays. So there was built another building near Nadia Hotel, our Ivano-Frankivsk drama theater. And this building was given to our Philharmonic. But you know, during the World War One, no, I don't recall which World War One, yes, World War One, it was destroyed during the bombing, and the construction looked like this. Well, mostly the same as you see right now. By the way, the architecture was the same guy that restored our town hall, Stanislav Prela. But when we found his sketch that was drawn by his hand, the theater looked a bit different. Better, really. Fully constructivism, because Prela was fond of constructivism. It was such part of our history, 20s, 30s, when this type of architectural structures were the most popular and the most cheap in So right now we have what we have, but still in 2014 our Philharmonic grew up, and there was there was built also an annex, another facility where all the rehearsals are held till this day, and inside the Philharmonic is only the concert hall and the facilities for us, for visitors, and everything else is in the annex right now. So let's go and visit another district of our city, because we've already seen the Roman Catholic Church, where mostly Polish people live. We've seen the Ukrainian part of the city. By the way, we are still wandering this part where Ukrainians mostly live. And now we will slowly go to the part of the city where Jewish live. You know, there was no rule to divide that no Catholic would be able to build his house where Armenian live. No, nothing like that. But when you know your neighbor is the same as you, I mean, a belief, a political view, it's safer to live with someone that is closer to you when you're using your beliefs. So let's go and see the in front of you is the only existing synagogue in our city. Originally it was constructed like this, with 4 towers on the top of the building. And by the way, this was one of the most, how to say, poorly constructed Jewish temple. It's, by the way, called the temple, synagogue temple. And a quick statistics. At the beginning of the 20th century, 1905, we had 30,000 citizens in Ivano-Frankivsk, and approximately 12,000 of them were Jewish. So we were, well, maybe half Jewish city, and if to say the truth, every first shop that you found on a market square belonged to a Jew. Till the mid-40s, we had 38 synagogues in our city. 38. But then in one night they all were blown by the Nazi Germans. Only this one stood, because the towers that you've already seen on the picture, they were destroyed during the bombing. And Germans said that well, there's nothing to destroy, and only because of that the synagogue still stands to our days. By the way, the synagogue itself is located on the second floor, and the ground floor is used for different purposes. There's a travel agency, a shop, etc. So it's for rent. Well, it's for Jewish traditions. Yes, Jewish traditions. I'm very often asked how many Jews are still in our city now. Well, I cannot tell you for sure. Really, maybe you know such a statistics, because we don't have something like that right now. Still at the beginning of the 20th century, you had to state your religious beliefs when you were signing for getting another passport or something like that. Now we don't have something like that, and I cannot tell you how many Jews are in Ivano-Frankivsk. Is there 100 or maybe 10,000? I really don't know. And I asked many of my colleagues, and nobody found any information about them. But they are here. They still have their holdings in the synagogues, so everything is okay in their life. I hope so. But as you know, during the World War II, they were desperate times. Many of Ukrainians helped Jews, and they are very grateful for us, really still till this day, because many Ukrainians were hiding Jews in the basements or the rooftops of their buildings. Maybe because of that, I don't know why, but when in our drama theater in 1943 was a play called Sharika, in Ukrainian Marika, in English Mary, about the girl, Hungarian, Transcarpathia Hungarian region, that loved our Ukrainian situated lights, our Ukrainian warrior. That was a bit patriotic play. I guess maybe more of you have seen it. It's still on air in our drama theater. If you hadn't visit, very nice play. But in 1943, Germans just went into the theater, and whom they were able to catch, they were all killed near the synagogue. And that's why you see the monument in front of you. The man that is tied, covered with some cloth. But this is not only the monument for those 27 people that were shot at this street. This is the monument for all the Ukrainians who fought for our independence, for all of them, because only because of such people we now have an opportunity to use Ukrainian language, not to be afraid of it, to say that I'm Greek Catholic or I am an Orthodox, Jewish, it doesn't matter, that we are free. This monument was put here because it wasn't the only one kill that was during the Nazi Germany occupation. That is the only one that we know about. And we know about it only because a guy that was using a restroom, but at the time heard that Germans were shot inside the theater, and he ran away through a small window that was in the toilet. And only because of that he hid there for several days, and afterwards told a story about such an incident. We know about it. Who knows how many more were there. But it is our history. We don't have to cry about it or something like that. We just have to be proud that now we are free and we can do whatever we want to. And do it with our mind, with our good intentions. Let's go. I see you all are cold. It's almost our last stop. The last one will be in the restaurant. It's a warmer place. So we reached an Armenian part of the city. As we spoke earlier, Armenians were that I found an old picture of the church you see in front of you. Armenians were here since the city was founded, and they weren't very rich. So they built at the same spot that we see our new church, as we all call it. They built a small wooden church, but in 1642 there was a blessing inside the church. There was a miraculous icon of Stanislavian Holy Mary. You see the copy of the icon on the top of the roof of the church between the cupolas. Another picture that I found. Times it was this is the beginning of the 19th century. This is how the church looked like. And you can imagine that in small. Oh, I told you 1642. Yes, I'm sorry. It was 1742. Back at the time, there was a small wooden church, and you can imagine that pilgrims, they were visiting our city to see our Roman Catholic Church, beautiful, made of rock, solid rock. The walls inside were painted, but yet, when they heard that there is an icon, a miraculous one, that is in fact a small wooden church, they all were visiting this church instead of the Roman Catholic. The owner of the city still were Potocki family, and you can imagine that they built out of their own money a whole brand new church, and all the people were visiting the small wooden one that was not in very good condition. Why so? Because the Holy Mary began to cry in 1742 due to one woman. She was doing laundry near the Bystrota, and her child fell into the river. She was careless, and the child drowned. She was so upset that she took a child, brought it into the church, lay down as a cross, and in the morning the child was breathing. This is the real story. Why can I tell you so? Because every miraculous icon has its own archive, where the people are listing the miraculous things that happened to them or to ones they love. And there is still existing this list of miracles that icon was helping people with. Because of the icon, what Potocki did, can you imagine? They created a whole new tax, 10% of the profit of each one in the city. Well, we all paid taxes, and 10% of the taxes that were paid by citizens of Stanislav at that time were given to the Armenians, not like money, they were like solid rock or some other material that was used to build this church. And the church you see in front of you was built in 1762, 20 years after the miraculous icon began to cry inside the wooden church. It was put near the iconostasis and was the first spot to visit by the old pilgrims who were at Stanislav at that time. The church was Armenian back then, and what happened next? During the World War II, Germans also didn't like Armenians, and they were often leaving cities as well. Our Armenians did the same. Most of them just walked around the different countries, but those who took the icon with themselves came to Gdańsk, where they settled and where the Stanislavian Holy Mary is still preserved. So the icon isn't lost, it is in Gdańsk, and all the Armenians vanished. We don't have them in Ivano-Frankivsk anymore. It was 1942, 43, where they all left. But back then, we all knew that this church is a sacred place, so we just couldn't give it to become a storage or something like that. There was opened a museum of atheism during the Soviet period, and afterwards the church was given to our Orthodox, Autokephali Orthodox Church, Ukraine. And now this is the Church of Virgin Mary, conception of Virgin Mary. Inside, by the way, have you all been inside the church? Yes. So, and have you been in Armenian church in Lviv?
Yes.
Someone had, someone hasn't. So those who hasn't visited, because you will see that Armenians have a little bit different point of view on the icons that they are painting. In Ukrainian iconography, you have to paint a saint standing, hands cannot be crossed, the saint cannot be seen. When you visit this church, you will see on the right you will see the fresk where Holy Mary is like playing with her child. It was okay for Armenians to paint the saints something like that, because they believed that saints also were humans when they were on earth with us. So they were also behaving somewhat like humans. That is very well depicted in Lviv Armenian church, because there you will even see the faces of those people who were giving money for the church, who were founding it. Well, as in Italy as well, the same, the Renaissance period, those who were paying for the fresks also were depicting among the saints. So here in this church you will be able to compare, and there is a little bit of difference where you see the icons of Orthodox Church and the fresks on the walls. Plus all the wooden sculptures inside, they are not marble. Now you can see the wood because of the small cracks that appears on them in the recent years. They are all wooden. And also a small fact that few years ago, when there was some restoration in the basement of the church, there were found 3 icons that were just, how to say, wrapped in very old cloth. And when the icons were separated, between them all was one that was very good preserved, and it was also a copy, or maybe not a copy, of Stanislavian Holy Mary. So when you visit the church, on the left you will see the copy of Stanislavian Holy Mary. Also our priest brought the rock from Saint Mountain Afon, and the girls who want to have a child, they are all praying to Virgin Mary, and they say that it helps them because of the feet of the Holy Mother and the icon itself. Plus, when the Germans left our town after the World War II, all the artillery, every weapon that was left was put in this small square before the church. Because during the bombing, you see that here we have a little bit like modern construction. Really, even the Trinitary Monastery was completely destroyed. One of the cupolas was partly destroyed, and the wall was cracked, but the wall cracked only to the position where the Holy Mary icon was made, and nothing happened to the church itself. I was trying to find the pictures yesterday where you can see the weapons in front of the steps of the church, but I wasn't able to find one, unfortunately. But if you visit our museum in the town hall, I saw the picture, I don't recall on which floor. I saw that the photo inside, and really you are watching this picture, it's just some kind of mystery. So, the rain is still going on. Maybe let's go to the bastion. There I will be able to show you how the city structure looks like. And you will be able maybe to warm yourself a little bit. So, Info Central changed the wallpaper to the festival Ivano-Frankivsk. I don't know if you have seen a new movie that they made. I specially downloaded for you, but I don't want to show you here where it's freezing. We will go downstairs to the bastion, and there I will be able to show you the new video that they created from Ivano-Frankivsk. Is it warmer, yes? Imagine this is the new map. We are now in this part of the bastion, which is red color. You all know that Myroslava was originally made an ideal city. What it means, ideal city? Not that idealistic live here, no, nothing like that. The ideal city means that every road has to lead to the central part, to the market square, in our case. Plus, as the basis of the formation was chosen one of the pentagon, octagon, or something like that. The geometrical figure which was called ideal, with ideal angles. The original city had 6 angles without Potocki Palace, like this, and it had 6 bastions. Few years later, at the beginning of 70s, the end of 1690s, 70s, Potocki decided to build themselves a palace, so the structure was a little bit changed. Still remained the 6 bastions, and there were built 2 half bastions. Why this type of construction was ideal for the fortresses? As you see now, it is a little bit changed to the needs of contemporary tourists, the bastion. The walls weren't high. But if someone wanted to invade the city, it was the best way to fight against them, because when we have a tower around tower, there also are so-called blind zones, where a soldier can stand, look at you, and you won't be able to shoot him or to do anything with him. That's why there were created bastions with angles where any soldier would be able to fight back his city. If you are more interested, I also have a video. There's a video for 10 minutes, if I recall correctly, that art gallery bastion created about the city itself and about the structure of the bastion, how it was used during the wars. You can anytime, by the way, if your guests arrive to Ivano-Frankivsk and you want to show them something by yourself, you can ask the administration of the bastion at any time to turn on for you a small movie. There's a projector and a small piece of white wall where the movie is all the time playing on, if you ask for it. So it's free of charge at any time. I don't know if you knew about that. If don't, so get notice. Maybe when your friend visits Ivano-Frankivsk, that would be a quick 10-minute history view of the city. This is the older plan, that's the same one. How the fortress looked like. Why it was completely destroyed. When we were part of Polish and Potocki owned us, they had their own private army that lived inside these bastions. But when we became part of Austro-Hungarian Empire, after 1772, after the division of Poland, Potocki family loved us so much that they even rented our city. They paid rent to Austrians to be in charge of everything that was going on in the city. The last owner is considered to be Potocki, and afterwards we became, how to tell, free city. So we were governed by the burgomister, like the mayor of the city, which was elected during the Austrian heritage. When we became part of Austro-Hungarian Empire, no one was invading our lands and there was no need for such structure as fortress. Can you imagine there were only two main ways to the city, the Pesmenica gate and the Hautka gate, and the third one was a pedestrian, only a pedestrian small gate where you were able to go out of the city. So can you imagine if you lived somewhere in here, in this building, back in 1780s, if you wanted to go to the market square, you had to go this way, or even this way. Only 3 ways to get inside the center part of the city. It wasn't convenient, so Austrians decided that the structure should be destroyed. As the stone solid rock, it was a good building material, plus the bricks also was a nice building material. So stone was used to pave our streets, and out of brick were built many of the buildings that were restored after the fires, which were very often in our city. And that's why the structure was completely destroyed. By the way, the whole Stanislaville that we walked around is a young one, because the older buildings, 1660s, 1690s, they were mostly built out of wood. And you know that wood burns very good. And only after the massive, we called it a jelly fire, in 1868, the government decided that we cannot build wooden homes, buildings inside the central part of Stanislaville anymore. By the way, I guess more of you heard about that fire. Why so quickly all the buildings were restored afterwards? The fire started on Lipova Street, contemporary Shevchenko Street, and the woman that started the fire, who was making a jam, she lived not far from the time of that time burgomister, the mayor of the city, and his house was the third that burned to the ground after the house of the women. Women, her neighbor, and then the burgomister's home. Of course, he was very upset of it, and he even got a credit, a big credit from Austro-Hungarian government, but he was very, how to say, very nice builder and very clever burgomister. So we never returned the funds, and the Austrians rebuilt it, the city, by their own money, using their own money. So the whole market square and mostly buildings that were damaged during the fire. On the Lepova Street also were rebuilt using government funds. And that's why we have all our buildings younger than 1868. Plus, during that fire, most of our archive inside the town hall also burned. That's why we don't have the exact dates of buildings or some events that happened in our city. Unfortunately, all our historians had to go through the archives of Krakow, Vienna and other cities to find something about Stanislavia, because otherwise maybe everything we would know only about the dates that are after 1868. A sad story, but that's what we have now. And the bastion itself now is maybe the first spot that every tourist visits because of the souvenir shops. Plus, we all tell them that they can watch a small movie with English subtitles. That is also very convenient for them to know something more about our city. And in the end, I told you that I would like to show you a new promo because now Ukrainian cities are fighting for the title of cultural capital of Ukraine, and they all had to present the promo of festivals and different events that can be very, very good in promotion of our city. The video I found was published in March. If I recall correctly, now it's on the third place among all the videos of Ukrainian cities. I don't know when maybe you heard, but I don't know when the title will be given and to whom. But I think that if we will become the cultural capital of Ukraine, then our Ruslan Marcinkiv will definitely tell all of us.
Вітаю, ваша подорож розпочалась. Машини цього міста на вас чекають.
Very nice one.
Because Mama.
Maybe higher. guess this is one of the best promos that were made for Ivano-Frankivsk, for Festival Ivano-Frankivsk. So on this positive note, I'd like to thank you all for visiting during this beautiful weather, today's weather, for walking with me. I hope that you learned something new for yourself, rediscovered your city for yourself, get acquainted with it for the first time. And as we ended our tour on the festivals, so please visit us again, visit our festivals, and only because of you we will live again and go through this whole pandemic period. So thank you very much.
Thank you.